Hey guys, I figured I would go ahead and do my video for tomorrow or for today. So what we're going to focus on today is lesson 9. Even if you don't get through all of this video, it's fine. The big thing I want you to get out of this video is the idea of what happens when you multiply a negative times a negative. So that's going to be the biggest thing within this video. And so if you get that out of it and don't finish the video, that's fine. Okay. So first thing I want to show you guys is something I did create. So it might be helpful for you. I did create this note page here, this negative numbers notes. It's here to help you. You can add as many notes as you want to, as many few notes even as you want to. But it's here so you can organize your thoughts on like, hey, what happens when we multiply a negative times a negative, for example, or what happens when we multiply a positive times a negative. So you can keep them all in track in your mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive on in to today's lesson. Okay, so for today's lesson, you will only need your Chromebook, you will need a pencil, and you will need your workbook. So like I said, we're going to be focusing on multiplying rational numbers again today. Focusing on multiplying side numbers. Last lesson, you guys learned that, hey, what happens when you multiply a negative times a positive is it comes out to be a negative. If you multiply a positive times a positive, it comes out to be a positive. Well, today we're going to focus on what happens when you multiply a negative times a negative. Okay, we're going to start out by going back to something we actually worked with in lesson 8, which is the idea of velocity. The idea of, hey, if you are going at a certain speed, it can be positive or negative, but speed is positive or negative in terms of direction. And so with the activity we're going to be working on, any positive number is east, any negative number is west. Okay. So what I would like for you to do, I'm wanting you to focus on questions number 1, question number 2, and question number 3. Question number 1, 2, and 3. Okay. If you do finish those, I'd like you to move on to 4, 5, and 6. But if you don't get to 4, 5, and 6, it's okay. So I'm going to set a timer now. We're going to do 4 minutes. 4 minutes. And like I said, do 1, 2, and 3. And if you finish those, go ahead and move on to 4, 5, and 6. You have about 2.5 minutes remaining. You have about 57 seconds remaining. Okay, that is our 3 minutes. So like I said, we're just gonna, or 4 minutes. That's, like I said, we're just gonna focus on numbers 1, 2, 3, and, or excuse me, 1, 2, and 3. If you did 4, 5, and 6, fantastic, okay? So like we had said earlier, if it is negative, they are moving west. If it's positive, they're moving east. So if we think in terms of this table here, okay, the lady who, or the person, the engineer who is standing, setting up the camera, watching as it happens. So +1, 2, so this is like 1 second after it passes her, 2 seconds after it passes her, it's going in the positive direction. So that must mean this car must be traveling east. This car must be traveling east. What is its velocity? So remember, velocity is going to be your speed that it's going, and speed is always measured in per second, per minute, per hour, things like that. So in this case, we're dealing with seconds. So we're going to look for the amount that's at 1 second. So in this case, the amount that's at 1 second is 60 feet. So that means the car is going 60 feet per second. Okay, what does it mean when the time is 0? So when we look here, like we talked about, this is 1 second after it passes her, 2 seconds after it passes her. So it means if it's at 0, that means it's where that person is at. And what do you think it means when it has a negative time here? If it has a negative time, in this case, the negative time is the amount before it reaches the lady, before it reaches her camera. Okay, so going ahead and moving on to the next question. In the next question, we had another table here. And we're looking at, hey, we know this car's velocity. We know how fast it's going. It's going negative 50 feet per second. And we're going to use this table if it's going at that constant rate. What is the rest of this answer? So let's just look at the feet. We should be able to notice a pattern here. Negative 100, negative 50, 0. So this one's going to be positive 50. This is going to be positive 100 and positive 150. So that leaves us really looking at, how do we get these numbers besides just looking at the pattern at the top? And we know the deal about our constant of proportionality. It's the number you multiply across. So 1 times negative 50 we know is negative 50. 2 times negative 50 is negative 100. So let's look here. Negative 1 times negative 50. Whoops. We said is positive 50. So negative 1 times negative 50 equals a positive 50. Okay. See if we notice a pattern in this. Negative 2 times negative 50 is positive 100. You should be starting to notice a pattern in this. And last but not least, we said -3 times -50 is +150. So you should notice a pattern in this. So we know from our past experience that a positive times a positive is a positive, a negative times a positive is a negative. But now we should be able to see that, hey, a negative times a negative is going to equal a positive as well. So if you have that like sign, so either positive and positive or negative and negative, guess what? It's always going to be positive. So that actually leads us into our final activity here. Cruising, okay? So this is on page number 160. We're really going to focus just on this table. If you do happen to finish this table, you can go ahead and move on to the graph as well. But here's what we know about the table. So around noon, a car was traveling -32 meters per second. So we can assume it was maybe traveling west 32 meters per second. So -32 meters per second down a hallway, or down a highway, excuse me. We know that exactly noon, it was at 0, okay? And then we're going to use that information to figure out the position. So let's go ahead and get 1 out of the way. So we'll do this negative, or this +2. So we know every second it was moving -32 meters. So 2 times -32, because that's 2 sets of the -32. We know a positive times a negative is a negative. So we know our answer is going to be -64. Okay. I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes. I want you to go ahead and fill out the rest of this table. And if you do finish, go ahead and move on to number 2. If you do finish, go ahead and move on to number 2. It's about 10 seconds remaining. Okay, so like I said, let's use that information that each one of these we're going to multiply by -32, because every 1 second is going to be -32. Okay, so 5 times -32, and you should have gotten negative 160. Okay, and do this negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 32. So we learned from our last activity that a negative times a negative, guess what? It's going to be a positive. So this is going to be positive 32. And if we think about, too, a car driving down a highway, if they're going east over here, or if they're going west over here, they're going to be going east over here. They're going to be doing that positive number over here. So 4 times 32, or negative 4 times negative 32. You should have gotten 128. And I'm going to leave those other two because then again, you should see a pattern here as we're going along. Again, so a negative times a negative is always a positive. And then a positive times a negative is always going to be a negative. Okay. So that leads us to our wrap up for today. A positive times a positive is always going to be a positive. We knew that from third grade. A negative times a positive, or even a positive times a negative, is always going to be a negative. Move myself over here. And last but not least, today we really learned and explored that, hey, a negative times a negative, guess what, is always going to be a positive. So really the one key thing to remember is, hey guys, if it has the same sign and we're multiplying, it's going to be a positive. If it has a different sign, it's going to be a negative. So go ahead and do the cool down first, and then the then 9.4. So complete the cool down first and then complete 9.4 with whatever time you have left. If you don't finish 9.4, that's fine. I'm going to have you work on it Monday as a bell ringer as well. So you guys have a wonderful weekend. I will still be having my Zoom call at 5:30 tonight. So if you guys still do need any help, I am here for that. And remember, if you do want a retake on that test, you may have it as long as you can show me, give me a picture through email of what you studied. And I will release that retake to you guys. You guys have a wonderful day.